But I think the consensus is climate change is an issue and something we should be worried about. How much of an issue is it, and what should we be doing about it seems to be where people kind of disagree. I get a lot of my information from this from like alternative media, which is like podcasts and things like that. So again, don't know how much it's verified, but generally these seem to be like experts in their fields and things like that. I think their argument is that yes, they agree climate change is something we should worry about, but it's not a big of issue as it's portrayed to be in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And the solutions being proposed by governments are going to make are not going to make as much of an impact on the situation as they say they will. And there's better ways to spend our time and effort trying to combat it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I seem to have landed based on like what I've listened to and stuff like that.
So I'm in a very similar place, and it looks like off the back of that as well, like I've seen a lot of people bring up, is the research and data hasn't garnered enough of time to see if these results are actually attainable. So to tell everyone to do this, do that, and do this,
Yeah.
you don't know if that's the right thing.
Yeah.
So the way I seen it was that you have scientists saying worry and worry now. You have people saying it's happening,
Yeah.
but you don't need to be as afraid as they are making out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that Bjorn Lundberg, I think it was Jordan Peterson that put me onto him. He's a climate change scientist, but he offers a very different view on what should be done about the situation. And his kind of whole point is what the solutions being proposed aren't going to fix the problem. They're not going to make a dent in the problem, and they're coming at the expense of people's the way people live their life, and it's mostly going to impact poor people. So he's kind of saying, like, he uses I think it's an example that was put to him where Biden has Joe Biden's, I think he's just got approved, or he's presenting a bill where they'll spend $500 billion on fighting global warming. I think the majority of that is going on solar energy, fitting houses with solar energy, electric cars, and I think the other one's wind farming. And he's saying the cost on the American people versus the impact that is going to have on actually solving the issue is it's just not, the cost benefit isn't there. And he's kind of, his argument, which is, it's kind of makes sense. He's like, asking people to cut back on consumption will not work. Asking people to lower their quality of life and not use things that produce CO2 emissions generally just doesn't work. He thinks the only way out of it is through innovation and coming up with alternative sources of fuels to what we have now that don't produce carbon emissions. And I think he talks about two. I think it's like nuclear fusion, and there's one more potential option that could be a possibility. But he thinks all that money would be better spent and more effective if it's spent in researching and developing these new fuel sources. Because if you think about it, like, do you recycle? Are you mindful of climate change when you live your day-to-day life?
No,
No, me neither.
not in the slightest. Everything
Me
goes
neither.
into the same bin. I don't really know what else I'd say
Recycle a
besides
bit,
that.
but like I would be mindful of like, oh, I could probably get the bus here instead of using the car.
Right.
I wouldn't be mindful of like how much electricity I use, keeping the heating on, stuff like that. Flying, I go on holidays all the time, fly a lot.
I just feel there's like a hypocrisy behind it that I don't appreciate, because they do tell people drive less,
Yeah.
get the bus everywhere, fucking walk everywhere, do this, eat less red meat, do green carbon footprint and all that, like reduce all that. Being said by rich organizations, that fly in private jets, that have mansions with heated swimming pools.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do this, you do that. But I mean,
Yeah, there was I can't remember the celebrity who was on the news. Celebrities urging banks to no longer invest in like fossil fuel projects and innovation that involves fossil fuels. And it's like we've uh, this is again from that pure number, but in our society, we generally use electricity for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of the developing countries like India, China, and other places, they still use a lot of fossil fuels in the day to day. Like they have wood burning stoves, coal fires, things like that, which means that, you know, not investing or in fossil fuels would probably impact the poor people the most. Um, and it's these celebrities that have, if you look at their carbon footprint versus the carbon footprint of a day-to-day person,
Precisely.
flying all over the world, big, you know, houses, multiple cars, it's very hypocritical, isn't it? And
Yeah.
again, it's probably good intentions, but it's not, because, and this is again a class point he makes. He's like, yes, it's an issue, but because it's been sensationalized in the media and portrayed to be this huge, urgent, pressing issue, people are not using logic and like weighing up their options when looking at solutions. They're just going, they think they're doing the right thing by saying that we need to act now, and the only way to act is to completely cut fossil fuels out or completely do this, but it's not the solution, it's not effective, and it's probably going to impact the poorest people the most if we did do it. So we're going to have very little impact on the issue itself at the expense of majority of poor people. So yeah, it's quite,
And what you save and everything for if humanity is affected so drastically.
yeah. I don't know.